Welcome to the FCS Edge, where our late season guest list has taken on some party crashers. I'm Craig Haley of Stats Reform and TheAnalyst.com, along with Zach McKinnell of FCS Football Central on SI. Zach, are you able to bring some clarity to this crazy postseason in FCS football?
Listen, I'm nervous about this left side of the bracket, Craig. Who would have thought, right? Just as everyone expected, Villanova hosting Illinois State. And, everyone's kind of made the joke. I mean, how prepared was Villanova to host a game on this upcoming weekend? I mean, I bet you there was some scrambling behind the scenes to try to get everything ready to host a semifinal crowd. Well, Craig, I don't remember the last time, and I know this is only the second year we've seeded top 16 seeds. I gotta wonder, when's the last time we've seen this equivalent in the FCS playoffs where you had such a unexpected semifinal on one side of the bracket while the other side was mostly chalk. I mean, it would take some research, but I'd be very, very curious to see when's the last time we had this much chaos in the FCS playoffs.
Well, you're making me think on that one. I think Montana State was an 8th seed, maybe 2021, and did they wind up hosting an unseeded team? That may have happened in 2021, but boy, that was something should have looked up to, because this is even bigger when you have 16 teams, seeded, and you have the 12 as the host. So wow, it's just been a phenomenal year. I mean, the reason we're here is because the road teams keep winning, of course, and eight road wins already in 3 rounds, and 5 of them are between Villanova and Illinois State. I mean, the other side of the bracket is all chalk, if you will. And Montana and Montana State's 125th meeting, but it's the first time ever in the FCS playoffs. So that's just a phenomenal storyline as well. It's wild, but do you feel the FCS needed this kind of scenario after so many years of just bison, jackrabbits, bobcats, breaking through there with them?
Yeah, I think so. Now, I mean, I understand that people are a little bit worried about brands making it this far, right? But at the end of the day, man, like I think in terms of the parity conversation and people needing new storylines to talk about and wanting to look forward to a new team winning a national championship, man, I think this is the best case scenario, because on one side of the bracket, you have underdog stories in Illinois State and Villanova who come with, like, I don't know if either one's bringing a ton of attendance, but they're big enough schools where I do think the TV viewership remains. But then on the other side, you have the brands, but you haven't had, as much as those two teams have won in the 2 Montana schools. Craig, Montana hasn't won the title since '01. Montana State hasn't won it since '84. You at least still have that new champion aspect of it, right? So I think it's kind of the best of both worlds, where you can depend on the Montanas to maybe bring you some of that name recognition for the average fan. But then also, too, if we promote this thing right as FCS media, man, there should be a ton of interest, right? Because of all the different storylines of the 4 different matchups that we could have, how big it could be and how special it could be. Because I mean, man, just imagine if Villanova or Illinois State get it done and win the championship. I mean, we're talking about probably 2 of the most unexpected or greatest runs that we've seen in the FCS playoffs ever.
Yeah, and when you look to Nashville, it's not going to be the same TV rating as if it's the Bison versus whether it's South Dakota State, Montana State, or Montana. At the same time, the TV ratings are helped because it's Monday Night Football, with no other competition for football. The brand has really established itself, especially in the last decade or so, FCS football. And new city. I mean, Nashville, you got that party feeling where people are more familiar with that than, say, Frisco. So I think that's going to help down the line. But, as far as this weekend, well, let's not jump ahead too much. Let's go back and figure out why we're here now. I mean, we can start with Montana State because they're hosting one of the semifinals. They beat Stephen F. Austin in the first quarterfinal, 44-28. What were some of your impressions, Montana State getting its 12th straight win?
Yeah, everyone kind of talked about how Montana State really, I guess they didn't blow out Yale like everyone thought they would, man. I think you saw the true, like, this team locks in when they get to the quarters. And we talked on the preview about how the past few quarters, this is what it looks like for Montana State. And I think when this rushing attack looks as good as it did in the second half, that's the true ceiling of this team. They struggled to run the ball early at times, but Adam Jones had an excellent performance. I thought one of his better performances of the year. Caden Dowler continues to make plays, but you really saw the impact of this Montana State defensive line. They're not going to have a ton of guys that are up for the Buck Buchanan Award on this defensive line with 15, 20 sacks. But Craig, they're going to make key plays and key moments. And Kenneth Iden had a great game. Paul Brott had a great game. What is it? Eckert had a great game as well. Zach Cruz, all those guys made timely plays. Kenneth Iden was unblockable off the edge. But then on the flip side, too, I thought Montana State did a good job putting a ton of pressure on Stephen F. Austin to make plays, and they just didn't deliver. I thought Vidlak had an outstanding game. I thought he was dealing. But man, the wide receivers were dropping passes, poor execution, poor pass blocking. They had no idea what to do with this Montana State defense. And I just think when you get into a hole as big as they did early on the road in Bozeman, it's a death sentence, really and truly. And Montana State is too good of a team to get up that big early and allow you to come back. Man, I thought it was an all-around great performance by Montana State. But if you ask Stephen F. Austin, if you ask Colby Carthel, there were a lot of opportunities that they left on the board that they could have capitalized on to make that game a bit more competitive. But I was really, really impressed with the Bobcats.
Yeah, I think their defensive line, as you mentioned, is really taking it to another level here. You mentioned Paul Brott. I mean, you look at the statistics and you don't even look twice. But then when you find out the way he's just dominating and plugging the middle and causing double teams, he's probably even been, their best defensive lineman, even though he doesn't have the statistics. And all four of their starters there have some form of all Big Sky. So I think that is a big factor here going into their next game, which is Montana, the number 3 seed. They're 13-1. They're the only 13-win team, blowing out South Dakota 52-22. On top of the 50-29 win over South Dakota State the week before. They're firing on all cylinders here in the playoffs. I think they're playing their best football right now, the Grizz.
Yeah, I've been so impressed with the Grizz. I think when you look at if you look at all 4 teams remaining, Craig, if you ask me which team is the hottest, I think it might be Montana right now. Like, you look at what Ayat's doing right now for them at quarterback, I think he's playing the best football of his career. He is dealing right now, and then Michael Wortham, and I said this earlier this week on another show, is I think he's going to go down in the books, Craig, as one of those highlight reel players. Maybe not in the conversation for the GOAT title in terms of the greatest players we've ever seen, but he's literally like a Pat White, a Deshaun Jackson, one of those legendary highlight players. That's what Michael Wortham's becoming. I thought he was outstanding, Craig, and who would have thought recruiting a kick returner / quarterback from Eastern Washington would turn into having an elite number 1 wide receiver. I mean, he had 200 yards receiving this weekend and just did everything. And then I think I was impressed with South Dakota's ability to kind of box in Gilman. There's just so much offensive talent for the Grizz that when you turn the football over early, when your offense is putting your defense back on the field immediately, man, you just wear down, especially in that environment with this offense. It's almost like the levee can't hold up forever. They're too talented, and your offense has to be scoring. And I thought the Yotes didn't have enough offensively in this game, and I thought it was a great game for them, right? But LJ Phillips was good at times, but Montana did a really, really good job boxing him in. And how about Keon Loud and what he did to Lorenzo Finner? I think Finner had an outstanding season, man. He's a really, really good wide receiver. But Keon Loud had him in a box. Kenzel Lawler did a great job on the other side. Micah Harper's been great. Craig, this is a conversation I've been trying to start on all the different shows I'm on, man. Why has no one really talked about what Bobby has done with this roster? No returning starters defensively. And you look at all the guys they nailed on. Hunter Peck, first team All Big Sky, got from the NAIA level. Michael Harper transferring from BYU. Keon Lau was a freshman last year. Kenzel Lawler's been there, but hasn't really been the starter. He's developed into what he is. Solomon from USC developing into what he is. I mean, he nailed these transfer evals. He nailed the in-house development for some guys, and now they have a chance to go to the national championship from a team that was just ravaged. Look at wide receiver Blake Bohannon, Brooks Davis, Michael Wortham. They did such a good job reloading at key positions, but I think this is one of Bobby's most underrated coaching jobs over his long tenure at Montana.
In some ways, I like what the Patriot League did. They went to a coaching staff of the year award, not just straight coach. And obviously, Brent Vegan in Montana State won the Eddie Robinson Award last year and was the Big Sky Coach of the Year again this year. But Bobby Houck was on this year's Eddie Robinson Award list because everything you just mentioned. I mean, they rebuilt a defense that didn't have a single returning starter. The big three has been phenomenal, and that's Michael Wortham, at a level that none of us even realized he would get to. So yes, I mean, just a great job all around, and it does seem like here they are in their 13th semifinal, tying the record and playing their best ball. So, all right, let's get the other side of the bracket. Villanova will be hosting Illinois State. Villanova 26-21. They won at the number 4 seed Tarleton State, their second straight road win. They fell behind right away, 14-0 midway through the first quarter, but finally took the lead in the fourth quarter. They've really shut teams down. I mean, only 5 touchdowns allowed now in 3 games, and that was the number 1 scoring offense coming in Tarleton.
And we're going to talk about the other game. It was a bad week to have a multi-score lead in the state of Texas. If you were a team from Texas, so we'll kind of spoil one of the other situations there that happened. But man, what a job by Villanova, right? Because we've seen Tarleton jump up on teams this season, Craig, and it just spiraled out of control. And how about Villanova with a senior laden team to stay calm, stay locked in, and just slowly keep making plays. And that was their mentality on the comeback, is just, we just got to make one play at a time. And they did that on both sides of the ball. But man, how about this defense, Craig? You look back, they hold a really good Harvard team to 7 points, like you mentioned. Lehigh was in the red zone, like 8 times last week and only came away with 7 points, and they forced a fumble to win that game on a goal line stand. You have another goal line stand this week against, like you said, the number 1 scoring offense in the country. And in the second half, I think the biggest difference was they were just better on the lines of scrimmage. Offensively, they were moving Tarleton's defensive line. It opened up a ton of space for Jabril Mace. He made a bunch of guys miss. He's become a star, by the way. The fact that he wasn't even the starter coming into the year, look at what he's developed into. But then on the other side of the ball, they started getting pressure on Gabalis, notched a ton of sacks, got after him a little bit, and I think it really disrupted the timing of this offense. And we know with this offense, you want to be on the field, you want to get going, you want to get the rhythm going. I thought they did a good job of holding the ball early and never letting Victor Gabalis and that offense find its rhythm. And I thought this was such an impressive performance by Villanova, and they are hot, Craig. Maybe we're underestimating them because they've won what now, like 11 straight games here. Maybe we've been overlooking Villanova a little bit on how hot they really been, like in terms of seeding going into the playoffs, predicting, because I don't think anyone saw this coming, but man, they've been playing some of the better football in the FCS for a while now.
Yeah, and this time last week we I know I did. I'm not sure about you, but I felt like Tarleton was going to go to Nashville, I mean, with the home field advantage. So Villanova, they've been hanging there like right behind the best teams all year. But when you have those programs like the Bison and the Jackrabbits, Montana State, Montana, Tarleton this year, once you're focused on them, you kind of forget that next group right behind them. And that would be Villanova all year. And here they are, another team playing its best football of the year. So, kudos to them. All right, the other get one. I mean, it's the Illinois State Redbirds, but they may as well call themselves the Road Warriors because they're 8-0 on the road this season against FCS competition. They're 14-1 on the road against FCS competition in the last 2 seasons. And that one loss they've now avenged. They won 42-31 at UC Davis, having lost there last year in the playoffs. They just went on a big run, trailing 10-7. They went on a 35-7 run to just put it away. Just stars all around getting the job done. The Redbirds are just, off the charts what they're doing with 3 road wins here.
Yeah, they might petition to play in Bozeman or in Missoula. They might not even want to go to Nashville. They're just like, let one of the Montanas host it. That'll be better for us. But this might be correct if they get it done. And listen, there's still a lot of football to be played, right? It's going to be a tough game this weekend against Villanova, and it's going to be even tougher game once you get to the national championship with Montana or Montana State. If they get this done, Craig, and they win it all, I really do think it would be the most remarkable run we've ever seen in FCS for a national championship for a team that going into the year, right? I know you were high on. They were preseason ranked 6th.
Mhm.
I wasn't super high. I thought they had a ton of question marks on the back end of the defense. All those guys have matured. You look at Shadwell and some of those guys that have really become great. The offensive line's been great. Victor Dawson in that running back room. It's just like whoever's healthy, just they find a way to get it done. And they've had kind of a rotating room there. And then when Tommy Rittenhouse is on, man, he is one of the better quarterbacks in the subdivision. And then you got an NFL guy on the outside, Daniel Sokowitz, that is just going to take advantage of any opening you give him, he's going to go make a play. And what a performance by him this weekend, man. He made, again, some just outstanding catches. But to go on the road against Sela, who only had, what, one FCS loss at Southeastern, and then to go on the road to North Dakota State and win the game in the fashion that they did, beating the number one overall seed, and then flipping it around and then going to the next highest seeded favorite on that side of the bracket and winning on the road in comeback fashion. And then you would have to go on the road to Villanova, and then you'd have to beat one of the top 3 seeds in Montana or Montana State. Yeah, it would be the most remarkable run. And man, how about Brock Spack and what he's done with this team? Because I don't even know outside of that locker room, Craig. I think if you asked the typical Illinois State fan if they thought they'd be here, if they told you yes, they'd probably be lying. No one saw this coming, and I think we're really watching history here. The further this team goes on, in this run.
Yeah, throughout the year, if you're a Redbirds fan, you're probably saying, "Hey, we're underachieving." And it just worked its way to this big run. Everything came together. They started to get healthy again. Sopkowitz, he was one of the key players who was hurt himself, so he's come on. They've just really found that niche. I mean, the fact that they were so successful on the road last year, they're not daunted by these kind of assignments. They even go into the Fargo Dome, of course, to get that win. So it is a great storyline, because if they do get it done here this weekend, they'd be the first team with 4 true road wins, leading into the championship game. So, either way, this semifinal round is just off the charts good, because both matchups, you could go either way with your pick. And I know we're going to struggle with it in the next segment, because that's how close these two semifinals are. You mentioned a tough week for having a lead down in Texas. You were referencing Prairie View in the Celebration Bowl. South Carolina State 40-38 in 4 overtimes. Just remarkable. There had been one other overtime in the 10 years of the game, and that was North Carolina Central beating Jackson State a few years back. But wow. How about this game? And it came down to that 2-point conversion, Ryan Stubblefield to Tyler Smith. Was that a 2-point conversion? Did he touch the pylon?
Man, I've heard so many different scenarios. Like I've heard coaches say that you don't have to cross the pylon. I've heard people say the infinite plane that doesn't exist, that just goes on infinitely. I heard other coaches say that's not true. Greg, I don't know. I didn't think he got there, but I guess I guess he did. And listen, the ref made the call, and I don't think that call cost Prairie View the game. I mean, when you have a 21 to nothing lead at halftime, you got to find a way to close that game out. And when you allow 40 points in the second half after halftime, you don't really deserve to win. And there were just so many. I think you, hindsight's always 2020. And I think when you look back, man, that reverse call made no sense at the time when they called it. It was 1st and 10. They were driving the football. You call a crazy reverse play, fumble it, and from that point on, man, momentum is a fickle thing in football, and you could just tell all the momentum flipped. And I remember when South Carolina State scored that second touchdown, they got 21-14. I was texting someone. I was like, yeah, I think they're going to win this game. Like, I just don't think PV has anything. And offensively, they really didn't. They had the one big explosive play that they hit, the long touchdown pass. They really weren't moving the ball efficiently down to down all second half. South Carolina State got whatever they wanted. And I think it's weird to say, but Billy Atkins having to leave the game might have been a blessing in disguise because PV had nothing for Ryan Stubblefield when he got in the game. And what a performance by him. What a performance by this wide receiving core, that defensive staff, Chinnisberry and this coaching staff are making the adjustments. This was a case of, I think, South Carolina State just outplaying Prairie View in the second half. And then also, too, there were just some really bad calls, like taking the knee there for that field goal instead of trying to go get the first down when your kicker's already missed that day. I didn't really understand that, but man, what a performance by the Bulldogs, and that they got it done.
I think one of the ways to explain is like Prairie View at 21 to nothing. It's easy to get ahead of yourself. You sort of look back to North Dakota State was, controlling the game against Illinois State 2 weeks ago in the playoffs. And, they had these big explosive plays. They're up 15 or 14 with 5 minutes to go. You get ahead of yourself. We do it as fans. I think players do it. But I think when you're a team like South Carolina State and you're down 21 nothing, while that other team may be getting ahead of itself, you get that first touchdown as they did, and suddenly it's 21-7. It doesn't seem as daunting. You found your way into the end zone. It's not a shutout. It's not snowballing on you again. I think that's a big factor here, that South Carolina State did not let it snowball on them, even at 21 nothing down at halftime. How do you explain the MEAC's now 7-3 in this series against the SWAC, which has twice as many schools now, and it's been that way for 4 or 5 years now? And some of the power programs they lost, FAMU and Bethune-Cookman was dominant in the 2010s in the MEAC. How do you explain the MEAC just keeps getting it done and now 7-3 up in the series?
I mean, listen, everyone is going to give you these theories about breaks and matchups and everything. Kirk, I think it's as simple. Like, you look back at the Celebration Bowl history, and if you really study it, the best teams won a majority of the years. I mean, the only year you can maybe argue the best team didn't win it was Jackson in 2021 when South Carolina State upset them. Maybe talent-wise, that South Carolina State team wasn't better, but that Jackson team wasn't ready for the moment, and they were able to exploit those weaknesses. But you look back at some of those A&T teams, man, like, they were beating FBS schools, they were beating top 10 FCS schools. They were just a better team than some of those Alcorn teams that they beat. And then I just think the better teams won, and the better teams been in the MEAC each year. And this year it was very evenly matched, and we saw that, right? 4 overtimes. It was just two great teams getting it done. And so I don't think there's any particular advantage in either conference, Craig. I just think it just has happened to be that the MEAC has the better team when we get to these games.
Yeah, I just think they haven't been shaken by losing schools. I mean, obviously, you don't want to say that, but at the same time, their teams step in and say, hey, we have an opportunity here, and they've done well in the MEAC SWAC Challenge to open the year as well. So great job, just a great bowl, and what a 10th anniversary to have this 4 overtime game. All right, now while all these postseason games are going on, there's been another storyline that's kind of heated up that we should talk about. FCS coaching changes. It started slowly, so that's maybe why everybody wasn't quite paying attention. But in the last week, it's doubled in the amount of changes. I mean, we're at 17, 18. We're waiting on a few that to just be formally announced. Probably somewhere it's breaking that we're not even aware of as we're speaking. But yeah, we're about 18 now, and like half of them have occurred since maybe last Monday. Half of these openings are filled. I just, as we look at the list, we're not going to go over all of them. Let's just talk about what's most intriguing, and maybe we'll rotate. You tell me which one is most intriguing to you out of these head coaching changes.
I think there's two that kind of stick out to me. John Gross at Sanford. What a hire for them. I think that is one of the more underrated hires. You saw what he did at Jacksonville State, 6 conference championships, get into the national championship, ultimately losing to NDSU, and it was kind of the first team. This is before the portal was like kind of a free transfer, but you saw how he utilized the portal, man. A lot of those defensive linemen, skill guys were drop down SEC guys that he brought down and said, man, y'all can come play here and we're going to win here. And so I think it's going to be very interesting to see if he uses that same strategy at Sanford in a time where the portal is much more heavily used. And I think he might be a perfect fit there. Spent some time at Clemson, and so he has those connections as well now. So I think that one would be one that I'm looking at. But then also too, Rick Santos going to Penn was just a stunner for me. Now, listen, I get it. If the Ivy League money's a little different, the Ivy League resources are a little bit different, so maybe it was a good move, but I didn't see Santos leaving his alma mater to go anywhere else in the FCS. If he was going to leave, it was going to be up. And I think what he's done at New Hampshire, getting them to the postseason, winning there in a program that historically hasn't been winning at a high level, was so impressive. And for Penn to go pull him out of there and have the nerve to take a shot like that, I mean, I think that's huge. And how about the coaching right now, Craig, in the Ivy League that they have at head coach with Andrew over there at Harvard, with Reno at Yale. Now I know he's taking a step back right now because of health reasons, but he'll probably be back. You got Santos now. Dartmouth has one of the top head coaches in the FCS. Man, there's some really, really good head coaches here in the Ivy League, and I think those are the two hires that stick out to me the most.
Yeah, and when you lose Bagnoli, Murphy, Tevens, the legends, legendary group that the Ivy League had just a couple of years ago, to reload like that is just fabulous. I agree. I think if I said I asked you about the most intriguing, it's not even just the most intriguing, as you kind of allude to. It's the most eye-popping coaching hire of the year, because when you figure Rick Santos won the 2006 Walter Payton Award at UNH, he's coached under Coach McDonald there. He's become the head coach. I did not see that happening, and I think what makes it eye-popping as well is it reflects on the troubles that CAA football has, that a coach leaves his alma mater in a conference that keeps losing key schools, and now you're losing key coaches who've been there for a while. So that is eye-popping, my most intriguing. I'll give you a couple others. I think the Monmouth change, I didn't foresee Kevin Callahan stepping down. He's been the only coach in their history, 33 seasons. But he was only 3 wins shy of 200, so I would have thought he was coming back. Great to see Jeff Gallo get promoted. He been on staff for 21 years, played there, so that's a great coaching hire. The Mercer hiring of Joel Taylor from West Georgia after Mike Jacobs left for Toledo is quite intriguing. And then Marshall Faulk. You're not going to get a much bigger name in pro football to come in and be your new head coach. And Southern certainly landed that next NFL name to lift their program. So it really is an intriguing list of head coaching changes, and it's as I mentioned, that's where it's snowballed in the last week. Now we're up to about 18 or so. All right, are you ready for the next segment? Because we're gonna have to make our picks.
I'm never gonna be ready. I still, as we're recording, don't know. So we'll see, man.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break from the FCS Edge, and when Zach and I are back, we are going to have our pick'em segment for the FCS Semifinals. This is the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS Edge. Zach and I are ready for our pick'em segment for the FCS Semifinals, and these are just 2 toss-up games. Our Opta supercomputer, it really favors the home teams here. Montana State is a 73% chance of advancing to the national final over Montana. The supercomputer also likes Villanova at a 79% probability over Illinois State. And there's good reason to like the home team, Zach. The last time either home team has lost in a semifinal round, 2016. James Madison and Youngstown State. Can you even remember those games?
No, listen, well, I won't tell you, what grade I was in when that when when that game happened.
I remember it quite well. The JMU went into the Fargo Dome and took down the dynasty of the Bison. And I remember Youngstown State's tight end catching the ball in the back of the end zone at Eastern Washington. That was 40-38. Just phenomenal. And ever since then, we have not had road winners in the semifinal round. All right, let's get to the first one. 4 p.m. Eastern Saturday on ABC. It's number 3 seed Montana, 13-1 at number 2 seed Montana State. This is, a rematch. 12-2 Montana State. This is a rematch from the regular season. 31-28. The Bobcats won in Missoula, and they've won the last 4 times in Bozeman against the Grizz. Tell us about this matchup, Zach.
This one is so interesting to break down and so difficult to predict just because I do think Montana is playing better right now than they were going into the last game. I think Ayat's a little bit more dialed in. Wortham's balling on the outside. Gilman's been really, really good outside of a little bit this weekend, but then that defense is really the difference, right? They were so good against the run last weekend and really boxing in LJ Phillips. The secondary has kind of been reinvigorated with Keon Loud on the outside, who didn't play in the first game. And then on the other side, there's been a little bit of Montana State getting banged up a little bit, right? There's been some talk on, who's going to play and who's not in some key spots. I think overall, this matchup is going to come down to which team's able to establish the run, though. The last game, Gilman was solid, but it was really that run game, especially the +1 run game with Lampson, that really made the difference. And then in a game like this, where these two teams are so evenly matched, Craig, turnovers matter so much, and that one pick six there by Caden Dollar really flipped that game on its head. If IGOT protects the football, they're going to have a really, really good chance. But again, I say you make your own luck in football. Caden Dowler is just always around the football. And I think that has to speak for something, that this Montana State team has been making key plays in key moments. And I thought that they absolutely looked much better last week against a really, really good Stephen F. Austin team than they did against Yale 2 weeks ago, man. So I think both these teams are going to come in hot, Craig. And I don't know if you saw the ticket prices, man. I
Yeah.
think I think those fans are really, really going to be fired up here, man. This is going to be one of the greatest environments we've seen in FCS in a long time. And I know those Dakota Marker games the past few years, Craig, have been great, but we really and truly get to see those all the time in the postseason. For this to be the first time we've ever got to see this rivalry happen in the postseason, man, I think this might be one of the best FCS games, most anticipated ones that we've had in at least 5-10 years.
Well, I tell you what, the run game's big here because that's the bread and butter for the Bobcats. They have 2 backs, and they've kind of perfected that in recent years to be able to rotate backs. Montana relies so heavily on Eli Gilman, and he's had 15 career 100-yard games, or 16, and they've won 15 times. The only one they didn't win when he's been over 100 yards was the game in Missoula last month. So tell me about the difference of that, having 2 running backs versus one. And in this case, it's Adam Jones and Julius Davis. And we mentioned Youngstown State earlier. I remember when they had 2 good running backs that they relied on at that time. Is that a difference maker, or do you prefer having one guy who's your linchpin?
No, I think the 2 running back system's great. I don't think this is like quarterback where you would like to have one guy. The more running backs you have, the better. And those 2 running back systems, especially when they complement each other so well, like Adam Jones and Julius Davis do, it's even better, right? Because they're both explosive enough to have those explosive breakaway plays, but Julius Davis a bit bigger, more physical running back, and then you got Adam Jones, who's more of that lightning in the bottle, but he also can bring the physicality at times. And so I think it's a perfect mix. Plus, Adam Jones brings so much out of the backfield as just a playmaker, right? You saw that last week where you can just dump the ball down to him and he could just tell him to go make a play. And I think it allows you to do so much as an offensive play caller when you have guys that are just interchangeable like that you can do different things with and allow you to be very versatile in your play calling. I think having as many running backs as possible is the best thing. Like I would prefer to have two like Montana State has rather than just one workhorse guy, unless the workhorse guy is like the elite of the elite, right? Because then you would always take that number one guy. But I think both these guys, in terms of Adam Jones and Julius Davis, are all American level running backs. So you always want to choose a two running back set.
Well, there's stars on both team, and there's so many. All right, it's time to jump into the deep end here with our picks. I'm a little worried that the Montana State off or defensive line will be a difference maker here and get it done. They've been together for a while. I'm just going to go with the Grizz. I'm going to go against the grain here, and I'm going to take the Grizz on the road. I feel like no matter what, I might wind up being 0-2 this week because I'm not confident either way I go on these picks. I'm going to take the Grizz on the road. I think their offense gets it done in the second half.
Yeah, I'm actually going with you on this one. I think the Grizz find a way to get it done on the road. And I think it's offensively that they're playing at such a high level right now. And I think if their run defense can do what they did last week, just similarly, right? Just try to limit the run and box some things up. I do think they're going to have a really good shot. Because if you remember last time, I thought Montana State kind of wore them down up front in terms of running the football, and I thought that caused a lot of problems for them. But what I think was what's happened is with Keon Loud back, it's allowed Montana to be a bit more aggressive with its defensive play calling. That you can trust them one on one on the outside. I think his return, a few other key guys coming back from Montana are key. And then I am very, very interested to see what the health of Tatum Gray and some of these guys like Paul Brought on the defensive line. I saw a report yesterday that they're going to be available and at least try to play, but what's the full health? Because both of those guys are super important for what this team wants to do. So I'm going to lean Montana in a classic. I think this game comes down to probably the last possession here, Craig. I think this is a 3 to 7 point game, and it might even be tighter than that.
Hopefully, because I mean, this is deserves it being the first time these two power programs have met in the playoffs. Here they are in the semifinal round, and it's their 125th all-time meeting. So hopefully, it's just a great game. I don't mind getting the pick right or wrong. I just want a great game. Let's go to the night game, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Saturday on ESPN2. It's Illinois State, the Road Warriors, 11-4 with 3 road wins at the number 12 seed Villanova, 12-2 with 2 road wins, but they're back at home in an unexpected way. And Villanova has 23 straight road wins right now, only one in the playoffs, Harvard. Illinois State has won 8 straight road games, so something has to give here. What is going to give, Zach?
And I'm so interested in this matchup because one, the Illinois State defensive line, I think, has been playing at an elite level right now. And does that cause problems for a Villanova rushing attack that's super important just to the momentum of this offense? Because I don't know if Pat McQuaid is a quarterback you just want dropping back and just throwing with no run game support. And so if Illinois State could take away that rushing attack, can McQuaid beat you over the top? I don't know because I think the secondary for Illinois State is playing really, really well at times too in terms of forcing turnovers and things like that. And then also their elite at linebacker with Knee Camp and some of those guys. But then on the flip side, how about this rushing attack for Illinois State? It's been so good all throughout the playoffs. Can Villanova's defense step up? Because I thought their defensive line and front seven have been playing outstanding, and it really might come down to which passing attack can take advantage of just any mismatch they can find. And I would lean a little bit toward Illinois State doing that just because of Daniel Sopkowitz. Also think Dylan Lord and Luke Melander have been emerging as two really, really nice pieces as well. So I think it could come down to that. Also, 2 turnovers. You look at Villanova, they don't turn the football over much while, you have Rittenhouse, who's a bit more of a gunslinger, and we could see 5 interceptions, Craig, but we also could see him last week. He made one mistake, but then was super efficient the rest of the game. Man, I really do think it's going to come down to which quarterback protects the football and which team is able to establish the run, especially in key moments on Saturday.
Yeah, it's so funny. Rittenhouse with those 5 interceptions against North Dakota State, and they overcome it with a victory. It's amazing because the rest of his year he's done well with protecting the ball. And he's got 41 total touchdowns. So it's great to see that he was able to overcome that because he's had a phenomenal year. I agree. Defensive line, the pressure is going to be big. Pat McQuaid has to be a little mobile here to get it done. You know, there's a lot of weapons each quarterback can go to. I think you go a lot of different ways. I'm going to go Illinois State here on the road as well. I think it's a close game. I think they can win by about a point. That's how close it is. So if we're going to get them wrong, we're going to get them wrong together because we're picking road teams in a year where 8 road teams have won 10 of the games, and you know, it's just been a wild storyline leading up to Nashville. Whew. Are you ready for these games?
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the best weekends that we've had in a while for the semifinals. I think both games I think are going to be extremely competitive and should come down to last plays, last drives, and I think that's good for the FCS product. And I really, really hope people tune in, man, because I do think we're going to see some amazing football. And who would have thought, man? We're going to Nashville, Craig, and we're gonna be there with Villanova or Illinois State. And who would have thought that would be the matchup that would feature those two teams, man. I still think if fans always talk about parity in the preseason, Craig, and when we hype up other teams, they're like, man, it's going to come down to the same teams. The same teams always win it. Well, I think we finally saw this is kind of we've seen this trending in this direction that man anybody on any given weekend can be beat, man. And what a moment for the FCS playoffs because there has been a lot of chalk in the past, in the recent years. All top 4 seeds made it last year. I do think that, like we were talking earlier, this is good for the health of the FCS that we have so much parity, have so much chaos right now in the FCS playoffs.
Well, Montana with the 8 times already in the national championship game. They have a couple national titles. Montana keeps getting there, and they had a national title, as you mentioned, 84. In this sort of chaos side of the bracket, it does kind of get overlooked that, Villanova and Illinois State are really good programs who actually have been to the national final before. Obviously, Villanova beat Montana in 2009 in Chattanooga. And if you look at the Frisco era, I still think the best game was the one with Illinois State. 29-27, the Bison scoring late, Carson Wentz with the touchdown run. So all 4 of these teams have been to the national final, and 3 of them have national championships. So it's a much better storyline than it's far fetched, but not totally in the sense that these teams are playing their best ball and they have programs that have been there over time. All right, so next week the FCS Edge is going to take the week off for the holidays. Zach, have you been naughty or nice this year?
It depends on which fan base you ask, but we'll see.
Well, the gift for you would be terrific semifinals this weekend, and a gift for our producer Graham Bells to give him the week off. He deserves it. He keeps us in line from week to week. So our next episode will be back on December 30th. We'll get you ready for the Nashville matchup. We'll talk a little FCS National Awards show because that's taking place 2 nights before the national championship, and much more. So we're glad everybody tuned in this week. We thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to talking to you again on December 30th. This is the FCS Edge.